I'm Rachel, 31 years old, and I never expected to be homeless on my birthday. After my mum passed away last year, I moved back in with my dad and stepmom to help care for them and manage their finances. I paid the mortgage, utilities, and most household expenses while working from home. Yesterday, during my birthday dinner, my father stood up and announced, "You've become a burden. We need our space back. Find somewhere else to live by next month." I was speechless. They had no idea I'd been paying all their bills for months. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had your kindness taken for granted by family members. My childhood home had always been a place of warmth and security. My parents, David and Marie, created a loving environment where I felt safe to dream and grow. We weren't wealthy, but we never lacked for necessities, and our modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Indianapolis was filled with laughter and encouragement. Everything changed when I was 16. Mum was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, and our family dynamics shifted overnight. Dad took on extra shifts at the manufacturing plant where he worked, trying to cover the mounting medical bills. I stepped up to help care for Mum and manage household responsibilities while maintaining my grades. During those difficult years, I learned resilience and responsibility beyond my age. I cooked meals, administered medications, scheduled doctor appointments, and still graduated with honors. Mum fought bravely for 3 years before entering remission, a period of cautious hope for our family. After high school, I attended the State University on scholarship, choosing to live at home and commute to save money. My focus was on computer science, a field where I showed natural aptitude. Throughout college, I continued supporting my parents, particularly when Mum's health occasionally faltered. "You're an old soul, Rachel," Mum would say when I insisted on handling various adult responsibilities. "But don't forget to live your own life too." I promised her I would, but caring for my family had become second nature. Upon graduation, I secured a position as a software developer at a reputable tech company. The salary was excellent, and for the first time, I felt financially secure. I moved into my own apartment, a modest 1-bedroom, just 15 minutes from my parents' home. During this time, Mum's cancer returned. The treatments were more aggressive this time, and the prognosis less optimistic. Dad struggled to manage both work and caregiving, his health beginning to suffer under the strain. Without hesitation, I moved back home temporarily to help. "It's just until things stabilize, hey Schweim," I told my friends who worried I was sacrificing too much. Family comes first. What was meant to be a temporary arrangement extended as Mum's condition deteriorated. I worked remotely, balanced caregiving with career demands, and watched as Dad aged visibly under the stress. After 18 months of fighting, Mum passed away when I was 27. The loss was devastating. Dad and I grieved together, finding solace in routine and shared memories. I remained in the family home for several months afterward, concerned about leaving him alone in his grief. Eventually, though, I returned to my apartment, visiting Dad frequently to ensure he was coping. 6 months after Mum's passing, Dad announced he had met someone. Karen was a widow he'd met at a grief support group. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and within 3 months they were engaged. I was surprised but supportive, relieved that Dad had found companionship after such profound loss. Karen moved into our family home after the small wedding ceremony. She was polite but distant with me, often changing the subject when I mentioned Mum or family memories that predated her arrival. I tried to build a relationship with her, understanding that navigating blended family dynamics could be challenging. "Give her time," Dad advised when I expressed concern about her coolness. "This is an adjustment for everyone." I took his advice, maintaining a respectful distance while remaining present in Dad's life. Karen seemed to relax somewhat as the months passed, though there remained an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite identify. 2 years into their marriage, when I was 30, I received a concerning call from Dad. He had suffered a minor heart attack and was in the hospital. Racing to his side, I found him pale but stable, with Karen tearfully explaining how frightened she had been. During his recovery, troubling information emerged. Dad's health insurance had lapsed months earlier due to missed payments. Karen, who had taken over household finances after their marriage, seemed confused about basic financial matters when questioned by medical staff. "I thought David was handling all that," she said, appearing genuinely bewildered. "I just pay the credit card bills." Further investigation revealed a precarious financial situation. Dad had taken early retirement due to health concerns, his pension providing modest but stable income. However, credit card debt had accumulated significantly under Karen's management, with multiple accounts approaching their limits. Most alarmingly, they were 3 months behind on mortgage payments, with foreclosure notices sent to an email account Karen rarely checked. Dad had been unaware, trusting Karen's assurances that everything was taken care of. "I don't understand how this happened," Dad said, visibly distressed when I outlined their financial reality. "We should have enough to live comfortably." Karen broke down in tears, admitting she had never been good with money and had become overwhelmed by financial responsibilities. Rather than asking for help, she had simply ignored mounting problems, hoping somehow things would resolve themselves. After much discussion, I offered a solution. I would move back home temporarily to help organize their finances and create a sustainable budget. My remote work arrangement made this possible, and my own financial situation was secure enough to assist them during this crisis. "Just until you're back on your feet," I assured them, not wanting to undermine their independence entirely. "Think of it as a fresh start," Dad accepted gratefully. Karen seemed relieved but somewhat resentful, perhaps embarrassed by the need for intervention. Nevertheless, arrangements were made, and I moved back into my childhood bedroom, now redecorated as a guest room with no trace of my former occupancy. The financial situation was worse than initially apparent. Beyond the mortgage arrears and credit card debt, property taxes were unpaid, utility bills had accumulated late fees, and Karen had taken out several high-interest loans from predatory lenders. In total, they were nearly $80,000 in debt, not including the mortgage. I created a comprehensive spreadsheet tracking all debts, income sources, and necessary expenses. Working with creditors, I negotiated payment plans and interest rate reductions where possible. Using a significant portion of my savings, I brought the mortgage current to prevent foreclosure and paid off the smallest, highest interest debts to reduce the monthly burden. "I'll consider it an investment in your security," I told Dad when he protested this financial contribution. "You can repay me gradually once things stabilize." Beyond the immediate financial crisis, I implemented systems for budget management. I set up automatic payments for essential bills, created a simple tracking system for Karen to monitor spending, and established an emergency fund that would gradually build over time. What had begun as a temporary arrangement extended as I recognized that Dad and Karen needed ongoing support. Dad's health remained fragile, with additional cardiac concerns requiring frequent medical appointments. Karen proved either unable or unwilling to maintain the financial systems I had established, frequently making impulsive purchases that derailed the careful budget. Gradually, I assumed responsibility for most household financial matters. My own expenses were minimal as I contributed to household costs in lieu of paying rent elsewhere. I paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and grocery bills, while Dad's pension covered their personal expenses and medical costs not covered by the newly reinstated insurance. This arrangement continued for months, evolving into a new normal that no one acknowledged explicitly. I worked from the small desk in my bedroom, cared for the house, managed the finances, and even coordinated Dad's medical care. Karen spent most days watching television or visiting friends, occasionally preparing meals, but generally contributing little to household functioning. Dad seemed content with this arrangement, expressing gratitude for my help, but never suggesting it might be temporary. Our conversations focused on his health, shared memories, and current events, carefully avoiding discussion of when I might return to independent living. As my 31st birthday approached, I began to feel increasingly restless. Friends from the tech industry had advanced in their careers, while my professional growth had stagnated somewhat, due to my focus on family responsibilities. My social life had dwindled to occasional video calls and rare evenings out, when Dad was feeling well enough for me to leave for a few hours. "You should do something special for your birthday," my friend Alicia suggested during one of our video chats. "You deserve a celebration after everything you've done this year." The idea appealed to me. Perhaps a nice dinner out could break the routine and remind us all that I was not just a caretaker, but a person with my own life and identity. I made reservations at a moderately priced restaurant that Dad enjoyed inviting him and Karen to join me in celebrating. "That sounds lovely," Dad agreed, seeming pleased by the suggestion. "It's been too long since we've had a night out." The evening of my birthday began pleasantly enough. We were seated at a quiet corner table, the restaurant's subdued lighting and soft music creating a relaxed atmosphere. I had dressed carefully in a new outfit purchased for the occasion, making an effort to feel special despite the ordinariness of recent months. Conversation flowed easily through appetizers and main courses, focusing on neutral topics and shared interests. Dad seemed in good spirits, his colour better than it had been in weeks. Karen was unusually animated, asking questions about my work and friends that suggested genuine interest. As dessert was served a chocolate cake with a single candle that the server brought with a cheerful happy birthday, I allowed myself to feel hopeful about our family dynamic. Perhaps we had turned a corner, establishing a relationship based on mutual respect rather than necessity. That hope shattered moments later when Dad cleared his throat and adopted the serious expression I recognized from childhood disciplinary talks. "Rachel, your mother and I have been discussing our living situation." He began using the term mother for Karen that he knew I found difficult to accept. I nodded, fork paused halfway to my mouth, suddenly apprehensive. "The thing is," he continued, "we feel it's time for some changes. We appreciate everything you've done, but having you in the house has become somewhat burdensome." The word burdensome struck like a physical blow. I carefully placed my fork down the cake, suddenly unappetizing. "We need our space back," Karen interjected. Her earlier warmth vanished. "It's not normal for a woman your age to be living with her parents. People talk." "People talk," I repeated, struggling to comprehend the sudden shift. "Who's talking?" "That's not the point," Dad said dismissively. "The point is, it's time for you to get back to your own life. We need to be a couple again, without always having a third person in our home." "I see." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "And when did you envision this change taking place?" Karen answered before Dad could speak. "We think the end of next month would be reasonable. That gives you plenty of time to find an apartment." The casual cruelty of delivering this news on my birthday in a public restaurant during what I had thought was a celebration left me momentarily speechless. I looked at Dad, searching for any sign of discomfort or regret in his expression, but found only resolute determination. "I understand," I finally said, my voice carefully controlled. "I'll start making arrangements." The remainder of the meal passed in awkward conversation about apartment hunting and moving logistics, as if we were discussing a planned mutual decision, rather than my sudden ejection from the home I had been maintaining. I declined their offer to share the chocolate cake, no longer in a celebratory mood. As we drove home in silence, my mind raced with calculations and realizations. They had no idea that I paid the mortgage. They seemed oblivious to the fact that I handled all utilities, insurance, and property taxes. Did they truly not understand that without my financial contributions, they would lose the house within months? By the time we arrived home, I had made my decision. If they wanted independence from me, they would have true independence, financial as well as physical. I would stop paying their bills immediately and use those funds to establish my own household again. They had effectively ended our unspoken arrangement with their birthday announcement. Now they would learn exactly what that arrangement had been worth. The day after my disastrous birthday dinner, I awoke with a clarity and purpose that had been missing for months. While Dad and Karen slept late, I sat at my computer and methodically removed my automatic payments for all household expenses. The mortgage, electricity, water, gas, internet, home insurance, all were disconnected from my bank account. Next, I transferred the household spreadsheets and financial documents to an external drive, removing them from the shared family computer. I would need these records to demonstrate exactly what financial support I had been providing if questions arose later. My calculations were sobering. Over the past year, I had contributed nearly $48,000 toward household expenses, not including groceries and incidentals paid in cash. This was money that could have been building my own security funding retirement accounts, or simply allowing me small luxuries and experiences I had foregone to support Dad and Karen. When they finally emerged around mid-morning, I was calmly working at my laptop, giving no indication of the significant financial changes I had already enacted. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "There's coffee in the pot." Dad nodded sleepily, while Karen avoided eye contact entirely, perhaps uncomfortable after the previous night's conversation. They moved through their morning routines without mentioning my birthday or their announcement, as if expecting me to proceed as normal, despite the seismic shift in our relationship. By lunchtime, I had secured an appointment with a real estate agent to view apartments that afternoon. My financial situation was actually quite strong, despite the money I had directed toward Dad and Karen's expenses. My salary had continued to increase through promotions, and I had maintained my own savings separately from household contributions. "I'll be out for a few hours," I announced casually. "Apartment hunting as we discussed." This seemed to catch them by surprise, perhaps having expected resistance or negotiation. Dad looked momentarily disconcerted. "Already? There's no rush," he said, contradicting the timeline Karen had so firmly established the previous evening. Better to get started, I replied evenly. The rental market moves quickly, and I want to find something suitable before the deadline you set. Karen shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I gathered my purse and keys, maintaining the pleasant, detached demeanour I had adopted since waking. I might be back late, so don't wait dinner for me. The apartment hunt was surprisingly productive. The real estate agent showed me several options within my budget, including a modern 2-bedroom in a secure building with amenities far beyond what I had experienced in either my childhood home or previous apartment. After viewing all available properties, I submitted an application for the modern unit, offering to pay 3 months' rent in advance to strengthen my position. The landlord will be impressed, the agent assured me. With your income verification and the advance payment offer, I expect we'll have approval within days. I returned home to find Dad and Karen watching television in the living room, their usual evening routine undisturbed by the dramatic changes in our family dynamic. I provided a brief, polite summary of my apartment search when asked about neither concealing information nor elaborating unnecessarily. The following days established a new pattern of polite detachment. I continued working remotely, prepared my own meals separate from theirs, and spent evenings in my room researching furniture for my new apartment. Dad occasionally attempted more personal conversations, seemingly confused by my emotional withdrawal, but I maintained pleasant surface-level interaction without revealing my deeper feelings about their decision. Karen appeared increasingly nervous as days passed, though I couldn't determine whether this stemmed from guilt or some other concern. She made small overtures, offering coffee while I worked, commenting on the weather, asking about my day, that contrasted with her previous indifference. 5 days after my birthday, I received confirmation that my apartment application had been approved with occupancy available immediately. I signed the lease electronically and arranged for movers to collect my belongings the following week, well ahead of the deadline Dad and Karen had established. That evening at dinner, I shared my news. I've secured an apartment and will be moving out next Thursday. The movers will arrive around 9 in the morning. Dad seemed taken aback by the speed of these arrangements. That's very quick. Are you sure you found something suitable? We wouldn't want you settling for less than you deserve. The irony of this statement after effectively evicting me was not lost on me, but I maintained my composure. It's actually quite nice, I replied. 2 bedrooms, in-building gym, secured entry. More than adequate for my needs. Karen frowned slightly. That sounds expensive. Can you really afford something like that on your own? The question presented the perfect opening. Actually, my financial situation is quite strong. I've been saving carefully and investing wisely even while covering all the household expenses here. A moment of confused silence followed. What do you mean, covering all the household expenses? Dad asked slowly. Exactly that, I said calmly, maintaining eye contact. For the past year, I've paid the mortgage, utilities, property taxes, and home insurance. My contributions total just over $48,000, not including groceries and daily expenses. The colour drained from Dad's face. Karen's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. That can't be right, she insisted. We pay the mortgage from David's pension account. No, I corrected gently. Dad's pension covers your personal expenses and medical costs. I've been paying all household expenses since I moved back in after discovering you were 3 months behind on the mortgage and facing foreclosure. I opened my laptop and displayed the spreadsheet detailing all payments made from my accounts organised by category and date. The evidence was irrefutable, the amount substantial. I had no idea, Dad stammered, looking genuinely shocked. Why didn't you say anything? It wasn't necessary to discuss, I explained. You needed help and I was in a position to provide it. But since I've become a burden and you need your space back, I've discontinued all payments effective immediately. The implications of this statement slowly registered in their expressions. Karen gasped audibly. You've stopped paying the mortgage? She asked, voice rising with panic. Yes, as of yesterday, along with all other household bills. But how will we manage? Dad asked, bewilderment clear in his voice. That's something you'll need to figure out, I replied without emotion, just as I'm figuring out my new living arrangements as you requested. The remainder of the evening was tense and uncomfortable. Dad retreated to his bedroom early, while Karen made several urgent phone calls in hushed tones from the kitchen. I continued my normal routine, reviewing work projects and preparing for the upcoming move. Later that night, Dad knocked tentatively on my bedroom door. When invited in, he looked older and more vulnerable than I had seen him since his heart attack. Rachel? I think there's been a misunderstanding. he began, perching awkwardly on the edge of my desk chair. "We never intended for you to leave immediately or to stop supporting the household. We just thought, maybe you could find your own place nearby and still help out." The disingenuousness of this statement was breathtaking. I regarded him steadily, allowing the silence to stretch uncomfortably. "That's not what was communicated at my birthday dinner," I finally said. "You and Karen made it very clear that my presence had become burdensome and that you needed your space back. There was no mention of continued financial support from separate living arrangements. We expressed ourselves poorly," he conceded, looking at the floor rather than meeting my eyes. Karen was just feeling crowded, and I wanted to support her feelings. We didn't think through the financial implications. "I see," I said, my tone neutral. "So the issue wasn't really about needing your space back or finding my presence burdensome. It was about wanting my financial support without having me physically present." Dad flinched at this direct assessment, but didn't contradict it. "It's more complicated than that. Family supports family. I supported you growing up, and now you have the means to help us in our retirement." "I agree that family supports family," I replied. "That's why I moved back when you were facing financial crisis and health issues. But support should be reciprocal and acknowledged, not taken for granted or disguised as burden." He had no response to this, simply staring at his hands as they twisted nervously in his lap. "I'll be moving out next Thursday as planned," I continued after a moment. "You and Karen will need to determine how to manage the household expenses going forward. Dad's pension provides approximately $2,400 monthly. The mortgage alone is $1,800, not including utilities and other essentials." "Rachel, please," he began, voice breaking slightly. "We can't manage without your help." "You managed before I moved back," I pointed out. "You'll need to find a way to manage again. Perhaps Karen can return to work, or you might consider downsizing to a more affordable home." The conversation ended without resolution, Dad departing with slumped shoulders and an expression of defeat. I felt a momentary pang of guilt, quickly overshadowed by recognition that I was simply enforcing the boundaries they themselves had established with their birthday announcement. The following week brought increasing desperation from both Dad and Karen. Various approaches were attempted, guilt trips about family obligation, reminders of Mum's values, appeals to my sense of duty, and finally, outright pleading. I remained firm but not cruel, acknowledging their concerns, while maintaining my decision to establish independent living and financial separation. On moving day, professional movers efficiently packed and transported my belongings to the new apartment. I had accumulated less than I realized during my time in my childhood home, the process complete in under 4 hours. Before departing, I left Dad with a folder containing all financial records, account information for household bills, and contact information for the various assistance programs I had researched that might help them manage their reduced circumstances. "I'm not abandoning you," I told him as we stood in the emptied guest room. "I'm simply respecting the boundaries you and Karen established. I'll check in regularly and remain available for emergencies." He nodded silently, still seeming unable to reconcile the consequences with the casual dismissal delivered at my birthday dinner. Karen remained in their bedroom throughout the moving process, emerging only after the truck had departed. "I hope you're satisfied," she said bitterly when she finally appeared, "abandoning your father when he needs you most." "I'm simply giving you both what you asked for," I replied calmly. "Your space back without the burden of my presence." As I drove to my new apartment, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, sadness for the breakdown in family relationships, relief at escaping a situation where my contributions were unacknowledged and undervalued, and cautious optimism about this new chapter of truly independent living. The apartment exceeded my expectations, bright modern spaces with large windows and quality fixtures. After the movers positioned furniture according to my instructions, I spent the remainder of the day unpacking essentials and arranging my new home. For the first time in years, every decision, from furniture placement to meal timing, was entirely mine. That evening, I sat on my new balcony overlooking the city lights, sipping tea and reflecting on the dramatic shift in circumstances. My phone displayed multiple missed calls from both Dad and Karen, along with increasingly urgent text messages about bill payment notifications they had received. I would respond tomorrow, I decided. Tonight was for myself. The first month in my new apartment was a period of adjustment and rediscovery. After years of prioritizing others' needs, learning to center my own preferences and rhythms required conscious effort. Simple pleasures became significant. selecting artwork that spoke to my aesthetic rather than maintaining familiar family pieces, establishing morning routines based on my natural energy patterns rather than others' schedules, preparing meals that satisfied my preferences without accommodating others' tastes. Work performance improved without the constant interruptions and responsibilities of the family home. I accepted new projects that stretched my technical skills, earning recognition from senior management and positioning myself for advancement. Colleagues noted the positive change in my demeanor and engagement during video meetings. Whatever you've changed in your personal life is clearly working, my supervisor commented during our monthly review. Your focus and creativity have reached new levels. Beyond professional growth, I reconnected with friends neglected during the intense caregiving period. Weekend brunches, evening concerts, and occasional day trips expanded my social circle and provided the balanced life Mum had always encouraged me to pursue. I joined a rock climbing gym, discovering unexpected joy in the physical and mental challenges of the sport. Meanwhile, the situation at my childhood home deteriorated predictably. Dad and Karen quickly discovered the harsh reality of their financial position without my contributions. The first mortgage payment after my departure went unpaid, triggering notification letters and late fees. Utility companies sent disconnection warnings when accounts went delinquent. Dad's calls and texts grew increasingly desperate as these consequences manifested. Initially, I maintained emotional distance, while providing practical information, references to financial counseling services, suggestions for budgeting approaches, information about reverse mortgages, and other options for seniors with limited income but substantial home equity. We need more than advice, Dad insisted, during one particularly tense call. We need actual financial help, Rachel. The electric company is threatening to disconnect service next week. I understand that's stressful, I replied evenly. Have you contacted the utility assistance program I mentioned? They specifically help seniors on fixed incomes. Those programs take too long, Karen interjected, apparently listening on speakerphone. We need immediate assistance. You have the means to help us, Rachel. This stubbornness is beneath you. The accusation of stubbornness from the woman who had called my presence burdensome on my birthday tested my composure. This isn't about stubbornness, I explained calmly. It's about respecting the boundaries established when you asked me to leave. You wanted independence from my presence. That necessarily includes independence from my financial support. These conversations repeated with minor variations over the following weeks. Dad's approach veered between plaintive appeals to family obligation and angry accusations of abandonment. Karen oscillated between hostile blame and saccharine attempts at reconciliation. I maintained consistent, compassionate boundaries throughout, offering information and emotional support while declining to resume financial responsibility. 6 weeks after moving out, I received an unexpected visit from my father's sister, Aunt Judith. Though we had maintained only distant contact in recent years, she had been close to Mum and occasionally checked in with significant family updates. "May I come in?" she asked when I answered the door, her expression conveying serious concern. "I think we need to talk about David and Karen." Over coffee at my kitchen island, Aunt Judith explained the catalyst for her visit. "Your father called me in tears yesterday, saying they might lose the house. He claims you abandoned them without warning, cutting off financial support they depended on. I wanted to hear your perspective before forming any judgments." I appreciated her fairness in seeking both sides of the story. Calmly, I recounted the events leading to my departure, including the birthday dinner announcement, my history of unacknowledged financial support, and the subsequent interactions. As evidence, I showed her my financial records documenting the substantial contributions I had made to the household over the previous year. "I see," she said thoughtfully after reviewing the documentation. "This paints a very different picture than David presented. Did he and Karen truly not understand the extent of your financial support?" "I believe Dad knew I was helping," I replied carefully, "but I don't think he realized I was covering all major expenses." Karen likely had even less awareness as she deliberately avoided financial discussions. Aunt Judith sighed heavily. "Your mother would be heartbroken to see this situation. She always worried David might be too dependent on others without her stabilizing influence." "I'm not abandoning Dad." I felt compelled to clarify. "I check in regularly and have provided extensive information about resources available to them. What I'm no longer willing to do is sacrifice my own financial security and independence while being treated as an inconvenience." "You shouldn't have to," Aunt Judith agreed firmly. "Your support was generous but unsustainable, especially when unappreciated. David and Karen need to accept the reality of their financial situation and make appropriate adjustments. Her understanding was validating after weeks of guilt-inducing messages from Dad and Karen. Before leaving, Aunt Judith promised to speak frankly with them about realistic options, including downsizing to a smaller home or apartment that could be sustained on Dad's pension. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we love is to allow them to face the consequences of their choices. She observed, echoing my own thoughts on the situation. It's how we grow even in our later years. The day after Aunt Judith's visit, Dad called with a markedly different tone. Gone were the accusations and emotional manipulation, replaced by subdued recognition of the situation's reality. Judith helped us understand some things, he began awkwardly. She made us see how much you were contributing without acknowledgement or gratitude. I owe you an apology, Rachel. We both do. Thank you, I replied, simply waiting for him to continue. We've decided to sell the house, he continued after a moment. It's too large for our needs and beyond our means without your support. Judith is helping us look at senior living communities that would be more manageable on my pension. This practical approach represented significant progress, though I noted the absence of Karen from the conversation. That sounds like a responsible decision, I acknowledged. The housing market is strong right now. You should be able to sell quickly and potentially have funds remaining after paying off the mortgage. Yes, that's what the realtor suggested. He paused, seeming to gather courage for his next words. Rachel, I know we've damaged our relationship with our thoughtless behavior. I'm truly sorry for how we treated you, especially announcing our wishes on your birthday in such a public setting. You deserve better from us, from me. The sincerity in his voice touched me, despite the emotional armor I had constructed. I appreciate that, Dad. The timing and delivery were particularly hurtful, but the underlying issue was the lack of recognition for everything I had been contributing. I see that now, he admitted. I became too comfortable with your support, taking it for granted rather than acknowledging its significance. Karen and I had different perspectives on the situation, which created confusion and resentment. This oblique reference to Karen suggested continued tension in their relationship, likely exacerbated by the financial crisis and impending move. I felt a flicker of concern for Dad's well-being, but reminded myself that he was an adult responsible for his own choices and relationships. Moving forward, I hope we can rebuild trust gradually, I offered. I'm willing to maintain connection and provide emotional support through this transition, though my financial boundaries remain firm. That's more than fair, he acknowledged. More than we deserve, frankly. In the weeks that followed, our Dad and Karen listed the house and began the process of downsizing possessions accumulated over decades. Dad called occasionally with updates or questions about items that had belonged to Mum, seeking my input on what should be kept sold or offered to me for safekeeping. These conversations remained focused and practical, a new pattern of interaction that acknowledged past mistakes without dwelling on them excessively. Karen maintained distance during this period, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary during the few times I visited to collect Mom's keepsakes and personal mementos. Her resentment remained palpable, though tempered by the reality of their circumstances, and perhaps Aunt Judith's frank assessment of the situation. 3 months after my departure, the house sold for slightly above asking price, providing enough proceeds after mortgage payoff to supplement Dad's pension modestly during the transition to senior living. They secured a 2-bedroom apartment in a community offering progressive care options, important given Dad's cardiac history and potential future health needs. On moving day, I arrived to help transport personal items too precious or fragile for the moving company. Dad greeted me with genuine warmth, while Karen offered a stiff nod before continuing to direct the movers with unnecessary intensity. She's struggling with the downsizing, Dad explained quietly as we carried boxes of family photographs to my car. 40 years in the same home, and now everything's changing so quickly. Change is difficult, I acknowledged, recognizing that my empathy could coexist with my boundaries, but sometimes necessary for growth and adaptation to new circumstances. He nodded thoughtfully. You've taught me that lesson rather dramatically in recent months. Not how I would have chosen to learn it, but probably how I needed to. Nikan. This moment of vulnerable reflection suggested healing possibilities for our relationship, though the path forward would require continued honest communication and respect for established boundaries. As I drove away from my childhood home for the final time, watching it recede in my rearview mirror, I felt an unexpected sense of peace rather than the anticipated melancholy. That chapter had closed, but new possibilities were emerging for healthier relationships and personal growth. My new life continued to flourish. Professional advancement came with a significant promotion and salary increase, affording even greater financial security. I established a regular volunteering commitment with a local technology education program for underserved youth, finding fulfillment in sharing knowledge and opportunities with others. The rock climbing hobby evolved into weekend outdoor adventures with a consistent group of like-minded friends, expanding my social circle and connection to nature. Dad and Karen gradually adapted to their new living situation, the smaller space and built-in social activities proving beneficial for both. Dad's health stabilized with regular exercise and improved nutrition through the community dining program. Though Karen remained somewhat distant during my occasional visits, the overtly hostile attitude had subsided into cool politeness. 6 months after the birthday dinner that had catalyzed such dramatic changes, I hosted a small gathering in my apartment to celebrate my half-birthday, a whimsical occasion that represented reclaiming celebrations on my own terms. Friends filled the space with laughter and conversation, the atmosphere warm and genuinely celebratory. Dad had been invited, but declined politely, citing a community event scheduled the same evening. "Another time, perhaps," he suggested, "when we've all had more time to heal." The wisdom in his response suggested personal growth I wouldn't have anticipated months earlier. Perhaps the forced confrontation with consequences had facilitated reflection and maturity that comfort and dependence had previously inhibited. As my friends departed that evening, leaving me alone in the home I had created for myself, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. What had begun as a temporary arrangement to help family through crisis had evolved into unhealthy dependence, followed by painful rejection, and finally emergence into a life more authentically aligned with my values and potential. The experience had taught me critical lessons about boundaries, self-worth, and the importance of explicit communication about expectations and contributions. I had learned that helping others was valuable and meaningful, but not at the expense of my own well-being and growth. Most importantly, I had discovered resilience within myself that extended beyond practical problem-solving to encompass emotional health and self-advocacy. These lessons would guide my future relationships, both familial and otherwise, ensuring that generosity remained balanced with appropriate boundaries, and that contributions were acknowledged rather than expected or taken for granted. The apartment felt peaceful as I moved through my evening routine, no longer a refuge from difficult family dynamics, but simply home, a space created through my own efforts and aligned with my authentic self. Whatever challenges the future might bring, I faced them with confidence, built through this transformative experience, secure in both my capacity to care for others and my commitment to honoring my own needs and worth. 1 year has passed since that fateful birthday dinner when my father and stepmother declared me a burden and asked me to leave the home I had been financially supporting. The anniversary prompted reflection on how profoundly my life has changed, mostly for the better, though, not without moments of loss and grief for the family relationships I had once envisioned. Professionally, my career has accelerated beyond expectations. The promotion I received 6 months ago led to leadership of a development team creating innovative accessibility software. Our project recently won industry recognition, establishing my reputation as both a skilled developer and effective team leader. My personal life has expanded in equally satisfying ways. The rock climbing hobby introduced me to Adrian, a structural engineer with a similar appreciation for problem solving and adventure. Our relationship developed naturally over shared climbs and post-activity meals, evolving into a partnership based on mutual respect, clear communication, and genuine enjoyment of each other's company. "What I appreciate most about you," Adrian told me recently, "is your clarity about boundaries and expectations. There's never any guesswork about where we stand or what matters to you." This observation highlighted how the painful family experience had ultimately strengthened my capacity for healthy relationships. The lessons learned through establishing and maintaining boundaries with Dad and Karen transferred positively to other care connections, creating patterns of interaction based on honesty rather than unspoken expectations or assumptions. My relationship with Dad has gradually improved, though never returning to the unquestioning closeness of earlier years. We speak weekly by phone and meet monthly for lunch at a restaurant equidistant between our homes. These conversations remain somewhat guarded, but increasingly genuine, focusing on current activities and shared memories rather than financial matters or past grievances. Dad's health has stabilized in the senior living community, the structured environment and regular medical oversight addressing concerns that had contributed to my initial return to the family home. He has developed friendships with fellow residents, participating in community activities, and occasionally volunteering with the facility's garden program. Moving here was difficult initially, he acknowledged during a recent lunch, but it's proven to be the right decision for this stage of life. Having appropriate support without burdening family makes a significant difference to my peace of mind. His use of the word burdening suggested conscious reflection on past dynamics, though we tacitly avoided direct discussion of the birthday dinner announcement and subsequent events. Some wounds heal best through changed behaviour rather than repeated verbal processing. Karen remains a peripheral figure in my life, participating minimally in our monthly lunches and maintaining polite but distant communication. Her adjustment to the senior living community has been more challenging than Dad's, her social network disrupted by the move, and her identity diminished without the family home to manage. She misses having more space and privacy, Dad explained when I inquired about her absence from a recent lunch. The community environment suits some personalities better than others. I recognise that Karen may never acknowledge her role in the family breakdown or develop genuine warmth toward me. This reality has required acceptance rather than continued effort to forge connection that she neither welcomes nor reciprocates. Aunt Judith has become a more significant presence in my life, our shared experience during the family crisis creating a foundation for deeper connection. We meet regularly for coffee discussing everything from family history to current events, with refreshing honesty and mutual respect. Your mother would be so proud of how you've handled everything, she told me during our most recent visit. Not just the practical aspects of establishing independence, but the emotional maturity you've shown throughout the process. You've broken unhealthy patterns that persisted for generations in this family. This perspective helped me recognize that the painful experience had significance beyond my individual circumstances. By establishing appropriate boundaries and requiring accountability, I potentially influenced family dynamics that would extend to future generations, creating possibility for healthier relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation or dependence. Financial separation from Dad and Karen has remained absolute, a boundary neither has attempted to cross since the initial period after my departure. The senior living costs are managed through Dad's pension, and the proceeds from the house sale with occasional supplements from Aunt Judith when unexpected expenses arise. My own financial situation has flourished with focus on long-term security rather than crisis management for others. The promotion increased my salary substantially, allowing accelerated retirement savings and investment in a diversified portfolio. I maintain an emergency fund specifically designated for true family crises, though its purpose and limitations are clearly defined in my own mind. Perhaps the most significant change has been internal, a fundamental shift in how I perceive myself and my responsibilities toward others. The caregiving role I assumed during Mum's illness and continued through Dad's health challenges was appropriate and necessary during those periods. The era came in allowing that temporary role to become a permanent identity, one that ultimately enabled unhealthy dependence rather than appropriate interdependence. Now I recognize that genuine care for others includes supporting their growth and autonomy even when that process involves difficult consequences or painful adjustments. True generosity stems not from self-sacrifice that enables dysfunction, but from respectful support that honors both the giver's and receiver's dignity and capabilities. This perspective informs my current volunteer work with a mentorship program for young women entering technology fields. Rather than simply solving problems for my mentees, I help them develop tools and confidence to address challenges independently, offering guidance while respecting their agency and potential. The apartment that once represented refuge from family crisis has evolved into a true home reflecting my personality and priorities. Art collected during travels decorates walls. Once bare plants thrive on the balcony, where I still enjoy evening reflection, and the second bedroom functions as both home office and guest room for visiting friends. Adrian has gradually established presence here as our relationship deepens his engineering textbooks, sharing shelf space with my technical manuals, his climbing gear stored alongside mine in the hall closet. We discuss potential future cohabitation with the clear communication and mutual respect that characterizes our partnership, each step considered rather than assumed. As I mark this 1-year anniversary, I recognize that the birthday dinner announcement that seemed so devastating at the time ultimately catalyzed necessary changes that might otherwise have been postponed indefinitely. The painful experience forced confrontation with unhealthy patterns and unacknowledged contributions, creating opportunity for authentic growth and realignment with personal values. This perspective doesn't diminish the genuine hurt caused by Dad and Karen's callous approach, nor does it excuse their failure to recognize and acknowledge my substantial contributions to their financial stability. Rather, it allows integration of that painful experience into a larger narrative of personal development and relationship growth, extracting meaning and wisdom from circumstances that initially seemed merely hurtful and unjust. The birthday I will celebrate next week bears little resemblance to last year's uncomfortable restaurant announcement. Friends and chosen family will gather in my home, Adrian will prepare his signature paella on the balcony grill, and genuine celebration will replace the awkward tension of the previous milestone. Dad has been invited for an afternoon coffee beforehand, a smaller, more manageable interaction that acknowledges our evolving relationship without expecting immediate restoration of former closeness. Life continues to unfold in ways both challenging and rewarding, each experience offering opportunity for growth and deeper understanding of myself and others. The family crisis that seemed so overwhelming a year ago now appears as one significant chapter in an ongoing story of personal evolution and relationship development. The most valuable lesson remains the recognition that healthy boundaries and self-advocacy create foundation for genuine care and connection, not obstacles to them. By honoring my own worth and requiring appropriate acknowledgement of contributions, I ultimately established relationships more authentic and sustainable than those built on unspoken expectations and unrecognized sacrifices. Have you ever experienced a situation where standing up for yourself actually improved your relationships in the long run? Or perhaps you've struggled with setting boundaries with family members who take your support for granted? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments section below. Sometimes sharing our stories helps others recognize patterns in their own lives that need addressing. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content, exploring complex family dynamics and personal growth. Don't forget to share with anyone who might benefit from this perspective on balancing family care with appropriate boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to establish clear expectations and healthy limits.